Michael Strahan stepped into the studio, which was known for its friendly atmosphere. He was ready for a pleasant conversation with soft lighting and gentle questions. Prince Harry arrived, expecting to be met with applause and admiration. The morning was supposed to be a cordial chat. What began as light small talk quickly turned into a tense argument, ending with a coldness that not even the bright studio lights could warm. Within a few hours, millions of people were asking the same question: who had really lost control? The morning sun of Times Square reflected off the glass of Studio A, creating a shimmering pool of light on the polished floor, like a second sky. The quiet hum of the studio was filled with the subtle sounds of a busy morning show. Coffee steamed on small side tables as floor managers glided silently around the set, moving in smooth, practiced figure eights. Michael Strahan calmly skimmed his note cards, looking composed and unhurried. He then looked directly into camera 3 as the red light flickered on. "Good morning, America," he said in his signature smooth baritone. "We're honored today to be joined by Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, to discuss his new projects, life in sunny California, and a whole lot more. Your Highness, welcome." Harry settled into his chair, dressed in a sleek midnight jacket with a black shirt buttoned just so, without a tie. His practiced smile was meant to photograph beautifully, but in person, it held a faint impatience, like a man unaccustomed to waiting. "Thanks, Michael. I'm sure the questions will be thoughtful." A polite laugh rippled through the audience. Michael nodded, his expression remaining easy. "Let's start with your work. Your production schedule, new docuseries, new partnerships. What's the mission behind all of it?" Harry's shrug was a smooth, simple gesture. "To cut through the noise and present the truth. Our truth tends to be more accurate than the myths others recycle." "When you say noise," Michael asked, his tone still warm and conversational, "do you mean tabloids, the palace, or all of the above?" "Any machine that extracts and sells people," Harry replied, his voice a little sharper. "Some wear press badges, some wear medals." "Understood," Michael said, moving on smoothly. "Let's talk about life here. Your routine, family, the school run. How is California treating you?" "I don't really do routine," Harry responded, his lips tightening into a faint, almost smile. "We build, not settle. We plan, not drift." "Fair enough." Michael flipped to another card. "You've said stepping back from royal duties was about privacy and peace. Since then, there have been best-selling books, documentaries, and major interviews. A lot of people at home are writing in, asking if that feels a bit contradictory." "It's not contradiction. It's control," Harry said, leaning back in his chair. "When I speak, it's called contradictory. When institutions brief, it's called history. That's the difference." A low murmur rolled through the audience, but Michael let it pass. "Since you mentioned control, headlines say you pushed for a significantly higher renewal for your series next season. Would you like to address that?" Harry's eyes flashed, not quite hardening, but a spark was there. "Men negotiate, and they're decisive. I negotiate, and it's news. The story isn't the number, Michael. It's my surname. Would you like to be transparent for our viewers?" Michael tried again. "Transparency is a sponsor's hobby," Harry clipped. "I make content." Michael set the card down, his expression still calm. "Let's talk about family, then. Only what you're comfortable with. Your father, your brother." "My family isn't a ratings infographic," Harry cut in sharply. "Who calls whom, and when is not morning entertainment." "I respect that," Michael said, unfazed. "People also ask about reconciliation. Is there a path to it?" "Reconciliation begins with honesty, not press releases," Harry said. "If that exists, doors open. If not, they don't." "Some would say you still benefit from the crown you criticize," Michael offered gently. "Visibility, introductions, doors that open because of a title." "The title didn't create my value, so no," Harry replied, a cool half-smile returning. "I made the title relevant. If a door opens, it's because of my work. Have you ever considered renouncing it?" Michael asked. "People don't bend the name they were born with to soothe strangers," Harry said. "If the word offends, they can avert their eyes." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Michael met the moment with calm. "Viewers are on your side when they feel they understand you. That's the goal here." "My sentences are sufficient for understanding," Harry answered. "I don't require interpreters." Michael's smile thinned, though it remained kind. "All right, what was the hardest part about royal life?" "Acting," Harry said instantly. Constantly. Not just on balconies, but in hallways. And your struggle with the press, Michael continued. Critics say the conflict also benefits your projects. The hunted breathing doesn't justify the hunter, Harry replied. If oxygen feeds obsession, blame the obsession. The pens of reporters paused over their notepads. Michael inclined his head. There's also tone. Some viewers say you can sound above it all. People who hear above might be listening from below, Harry said, his voice like velvet over stone. My height is their expectation problem. A sharp inhale came from somewhere off camera. Michael kept his steady pace. Private life, your marriage, separate travel, different calendars. Rumors swirl. Any comment? Rumor is the cheap substitute for reality, Harry said, his smile cooling. We produce reality. Others produce rumor. So the line is that privacy is private, Michael finished for him. Harry cut him off. Curiosity isn't a credential. Michael absorbed the interruption and smoothly pivoted. Storytelling then. Themes this season. Power, cost, freedom, Harry said smoothly. Voices that were lowered, raised in monarchy, Michael asked, his voice soft as felt. Age is not a virtue, Harry answered. 1,000 years make something old, not right. A quiet crackle reached the rafters. Michael didn't try to paper over it. Viewers love accountability, too. Any moment you'd handle differently, a sentence you'd phrase with more grace. Harry looked directly into camera 3. If anything, I'd have spoken faster. Patience gets misread as permission. Maybe, Michael said, a hint of steel under the velvet. Or maybe patience invites understanding. He turned to the lens. Quick break. When we return, we'll get into specific security timelines and where privacy ends and public responsibility begins. Music rose, and crew members flowed back onto the set. A makeup brush hovered, but Harry declined with a flick of his fingers. Michael drank some water, his cards now untouched. Everyone in Studio A felt it. The first segment had been polite, but the next would not be. The red light blinked back on. Welcome back, Michael said, his posture a notch straighter. Let's talk clarity. The New York Chase police statements didn't fully match your account. Viewers want help reconciling that. Harry's jaw tightened, and then stilled. People who read reports think they've lived the night. I lived it. They skimmed it. Understood, Michael said. One more? You say private life, yet you choose the biggest stages. For you, where does privacy end and responsibility to the public begin? Harry's smile returned, colder now. Where I decide. That's the point of agency. The audience held its breath. Michael set his cards aside. They were no longer useful. The second segment opened under brighter lights, but the mood was already shifting. The usual warmth of Good Morning America had turned into a quiet unease, like static before a storm. Producers in the control room leaned forward, their fingers hovering over the talkback buttons, but no one dared interrupt. This was live television gold, if it didn't completely fall apart. Michael Strahan's smile held, though his jaw had stiffened almost imperceptibly. So, Harry, he began smoothly. You've spoken often about mental health, resilience, and redefining manhood in the modern age. It's powerful, but some critics suggest your delivery comes across as combative. Do you see yourself as misunderstood? Harry leaned back, one arm stretched across the armrest like a king surveying his throne room. If people misunderstand me, that's their limitation, not mine. I speak clearly. If they hear hostility, maybe that's because they're used to being coddled. A faint murmur rippled through the audience. Michael's nod was slow and measured. Some would say tone is as important as content. The way people hear you determines whether your message lands. Harry's smirk flickered. You know, Michael, it's amusing. When my brother speaks, he's called diplomatic. When I speak, I'm labeled angry. Same words, different names. That tells you all you need to know about bias. Michael stayed calm, flipping to another card but not breaking eye contact. Speaking of your brother, Prince William, many wonder if the two of you will ever find common ground again. Is reconciliation possible? Harry's eyes narrowed slightly. Reconciliation implies equality. William was always treated like the finished product. I was the spare part. If people expect me to bow and scrape my way back into his good graces, they'll be waiting forever. The crowd gasped softly. Michael let the silence hang for a moment before replying. That's a strong statement. But don't you think as brothers there's value in meeting halfway? Harry laughed, a short, joyless sound. Halfway. Tell me, Michael, if you were told since birth that your role was to be expendable, an insurance policy, a backup, a body in waiting, would you meet halfway? Would you finally step off the chessboard and play your own game? The air grew thick with tension. Michael nodded once, keeping his tone even. I think viewers can empathize with the feeling of being overshadowed. But some might say you've spent years reminding the world of that pain instead of moving past it. Harry tilted his head, his lips curling in something between amusement and disdain. Moving past it is what people tell you to do when they don't want to hear the truth anymore. My truth doesn't expire because others are bored of it. The audience shifted uncomfortably. The control room buzzed with nervous whispers. Michael pressed on, his voice calm and professional. Fair enough. Let's talk about your mother. Princess Diana is remembered as a symbol of compassion, dignity, grace under fire. Do you feel your choices honor that legacy? Harry's expression hardened, his posture tightening for the first time. I don't need a morning show host to grade my relationship with my mother's memory. She lived it. I live it. Everyone else is just speculating. Michael's eyes flickered, but he didn't snap back. Respectfully, Harry, the public remembers her as much as they remember you. They care. They want to know. They want to consume, Harry interrupted sharply. Diana was devoured by public hunger. And now you want to hold me accountable to the same appetites. That's rich. The crowd murmured louder this time, uneasy. Michael clasped his hands, leaning forward. I want to understand whether you believe your actions, your interviews, your series, your book are in line with her values. Harry's laugh was cold, almost mocking. Her values were compassion. Mine is honesty. Sometimes honesty doesn't look gentle on camera, but it's still true. Michael inhaled slowly, steadying his voice. Some critics argue honesty can also become cruelty when it's wielded without care. Do you worry that in telling your story you've hurt the very people you claim to love? Harry crossed his legs, leaning back with an air of superiority. If the truth hurts them, then maybe the issue isn't the truth, it's them. The studio froze. The silence that followed was heavy enough to smother. Michael's lips pressed into a faint line before he spoke again. Let's turn to your father then. King Charles. Harry cut him off with a derisive snort. King Charles. Amazing, isn't it? A man spends decades waiting for a promotion, and suddenly he's a saint. He's not my king. He's a man who failed my mother and treated me as collateral. Gasps erupted from the audience. Michael's expression remained controlled, but his voice dropped half a note. Harry, these are strong accusations. Millions respect your father. Millions didn't grow up under his roof, Harry shot back. Respect is earned. Titles don't erase neglect. The tension in the studio was now razor-sharp. Michael pressed his hands together as if grounding himself. People watching at home want answers, not bitterness. They want to see growth. Growth doesn't always look polite on TV, Harry snapped. Maybe Americans want their royals packaged like Hallmark movies. Sorry to disappoint. Michael's patience was fraying, though he hid it well. His eyes flicked briefly to a producer through the glass, a silent signal passing between them. Hold steady. He leaned forward, his voice gentle but unyielding. You came here today to promote your work, and we want to hear about it. But do you understand how your words here might overshadow that? Harry gave a thin smile. If people are more interested in my family drama than my projects, that's on them. Or maybe it's on you for asking the wrong questions. Michael let the remark land. The silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, dangerous, a storm cloud suspended above the studio. He adjusted his tie, his voice calm, but firmer now. We'll continue this conversation after the break. Stay with us. The cameras faded to commercial. Crew members exhaled sharply, some muttering under their breath. Harry sipped his water, a smug satisfaction on his face. Michael sat perfectly still, his eyes locked on the cards in his hand, though he hadn't read from them in minutes. Everyone in the studio knew it. The interview had crossed a line, and the next segment would decide if it spiraled beyond repair. The third segment began with tighter camera angles, as if even the production team sensed the danger of wide shots. The audience sat stiffly, their usual smiles replaced by cautious silence. The Good Morning America theme faded into the background, leaving only the tension between host and guest. Michael Strahan leaned forward, hands folded, his composure unshaken, but his eyes sharper now. Welcome back. We've been having a candid conversation with Prince Harry. Let's go deeper into something you've raised before, security. You've spoken about fears for your family's safety. Many viewers empathize. But others wonder, with millions in deals and contracts, do you think it's fair to expect the British taxpayer, or anyone, to foot that bill? Harry tilted his head, his lips twitching into a smirk that felt less amused and more dismissive. Fair? Let me ask you, Michael, do you ask CEOs or athletes about who pays for their security? Or just me because of the title you all obsess over? Michael remained calm. I think people ask because the monarchy is publicly funded. That context matters. Harry scoffed, leaning back in his chair. Context, right? My safety isn't a public vote, Michael. It's a necessity. The fact people question it shows how little they understand about the threats I face. You've said the threats are real, Michael acknowledged, his voice smooth. But transparency helps viewers trust you. They want to know the difference between security and privilege. Harry's smile cooled. Transparency is what the tabloids weaponize. I'm not handing them ammunition. The control room buzzed nervously. Producers gestured for Michael to move on, but he ignored them. He wasn't rattled. He was resolute. Let's talk about legacy, Michael said. You and Meghan stepped away to build a new life. Do you think history will remember that as an act of courage or an act of abandonment? Harry's jaw tightened. History will remember it as survival. And anyone who calls it abandonment clearly wasn't in the crosshairs like we were. Some, Michael pressed gently, would argue that abandoning duties also meant abandoning responsibilities. People who looked up to you as symbols of service felt betrayed. Harry laughed, sharp and joyless. Symbols of service. That's what the firm sells to keep the lights on. I'm not a mascot, Michael. I'm a man. I don't exist to make strangers feel patriotic. The audience gasped again. Michael's tone dipped lower, steadier. You understand why people feel connected. They grew up watching you. They mourned with you when your mother passed. They want to believe in you. Harry leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. They didn't walk behind her coffin with cameras inches from their face. They didn't hear the cheers and jeers mixing like poison in the air. If they wanted to believe in me, they should have believed I deserve peace. They didn't. They consume me, and they'll keep consuming until I shut the door. Michael's lips parted slightly, but he said nothing for a beat. The silence was deafening. When he did speak, his voice was calm but deliberate. Harry, do you think maybe, just maybe, you've let anger define too much of your story? Harry's smirk returned. Anger? Anger is what people accuse you of when you refuse to keep smiling through disrespect. I'm not angry. I'm awake. A murmur spread across the risers. You've said before that you want to build bridges. Yet today, much of what you're saying feels like you're burning them. Do you see that contradiction? Harry tilted his chin, defiant. Sometimes burning a bridge is the only way to prove it leads nowhere worth going. The line was sharp, almost rehearsed. Michael absorbed it, his hands tightening slightly before relaxing. What about your grandmother, the late Queen Elizabeth? Many viewers felt she embodied duty. Do you believe you honored her example? For the first time, Harry's smile turned mocking. She embodied endurance, not duty, staying silent while tradition suffocated everyone around her. If that's honor, then maybe honor isn't worth much. The audience audibly gasped. Michael's eyes flickered with something colder now. He steadied himself, but his voice cut lower. Harry, millions adored your grandmother. Those words are painful for them to hear. Maybe the truth should be painful, Harry shot back. Fairy tales are comfortable lies. I'm not here to comfort anyone. The silence was jagged, dangerous. The tension had gone from sparring to a courtroom where a verdict was imminent. Michael straightened, his patience stretched thin. We've talked about your father, your brother, your grandmother. But let me ask, are you proud of the way you've handled this chapter of your life? Harry didn't blink. I'm proud I didn't break. I'm proud I didn't let them bury me under their institution. If the world doesn't like my methods, that's their problem, not mine. The words hung in the air like smoke. Michael's hands folded slowly, his expression unwavering. Then let me put it differently, he said, his voice smooth as glass. Are you certain that history won't say you broke faith with the people who once believed in you? Harry gave the faintest shrug, smug and cold. History will say I told the truth, and if they don't like the truth, they can rewrite their fairy tales. The studio was a powder keg. Every word, every glance was a spark. Michael's composure was held by threads, and they were fraying. The control room didn't dare cut to commercial. The break was coming, and it wouldn't be subtle. The studio lights burned brighter than ever, fueled by the heat of the moment. Prince Harry leaned back with that familiar smirk, arms crossed, as if he were grading the show. Michael Strahan took a slow breath. He had tolerated the deflections, the arrogance, the barbs disguised as wit. But this wasn't an interview anymore. It was a live unraveling. "Harry," Michael began, his tone firm but still polite. "You've said a lot about truth tonight, about fairy tales and survival. But let me ask you this plainly. Do you believe you've lived up to your mother's legacy?" The name alone shifted the air. The audience hushed. Even Harry's smirk faltered, but only for a second. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing with defiance. "My mother," Harry said sharply, "would have despised what the monarchy did to me. She'd have told me to get out, to save myself, to choose happiness over duty. So yes, Michael, I think she'd be proud." Michael's jaw tightened. "Proud that you've cut off your family? Proud that your brother shoulders the responsibility alone while you tear down the institution from across the ocean?" Harry snapped back instantly. "Proud that I refused to be their puppet. William chose his chains. I broke mine." A ripple went through the audience. Michael's composure began to crack, his voice now carrying an edge. "So, you think your mother would be proud of you attacking your family on live television? Of you building an empire out of resentment? Is that really what you believe, Harry?" Harry sneered. "I believe she'd be proud I didn't let her fate become mine. You wouldn't understand. You never lived it." That was the moment Michael sat forward, his voice dropping low, all the polite velvet gone. "No, Harry. What I understand is that your mother gave her life in service, and you've spent years running from it. You talk about survival, but what I see is a man so consumed with being the victim that he doesn't realize he's become the problem." The audience froze. Harry blinked, but his arrogance doubled down. He let out a short, bitter laugh. "You sound just like the tabloids," Harry said coldly. "Another American pretending to know Diana better than her own son." Michael didn't flinch. "No, I sound like someone who's listened long enough. And I'm telling you, Harry, this act, this arrogance, this endless deflection, it's not strength. It's weakness dressed up as rebellion." The air crackled. Harry's face flushed, his jaw clenched. But before he could fire back, Michael continued, louder now, addressing both him and the millions watching. "You want the truth? Here it is. You will never escape William's shadow. Not because he's better than you, but because you've built your entire identity around running from him. You will never honor your mother because you use her memory as a shield instead of a guide. And you will never earn the respect you demand because respect is given to those who show humility, not to those who sneer at it." The studio erupted in murmurs. Harry shot up from his chair, his face red with fury. "How dare you?" he began, but Michael cut him off with finality. "This interview is over." The words rang like a gavel. Michael turned to the audience, his tone shifting back to steady professionalism. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to apologize. You came here for a conversation. What you got was arrogance that no host, no platform should be expected to indulge. This broadcast cannot continue under these circumstances." Harry stood frozen, his chest heaving, his eyes darting toward the exit. Security discreetly moved closer, though Michael didn't glance their way. "Prince Harry," Michael said firmly, turning back to him. "This set is no longer yours. Please leave." The silence was absolute. Harry yanked off his microphone, tossing it onto the chair with a sharp clatter. He muttered something inaudible and stormed off the set, his footsteps echoing in the stunned quiet. Michael straightened his notes, smoothed his tie, and looked directly into the camera. His voice was calm now. "This is live television," he said simply. "And sometimes the truth doesn't just reveal itself, it forces its way out. We'll be right back." The screen faded to commercial. The clip was already destined to ricochet across every platform within minutes. Prince Harry had wanted control. What he left behind was chaos, and the man who had endured enough had finally drawn a line.